Damn it, I can't see the runway. You?
I do not have the runway.
What the heck?
A flight from Belfast ends in disaster.
It's a time of great sadness.
The wreckage provides a baffling clue.
You know, it doesn't make sense. How did they manage to flip over?
It's not a normal thing for an airplane to land upside down.
The search for answers leads to a startling discovery.
Wait a minute. That can't be right.
It's like peeling an onion, you know? You cut away one layer and there's another layer underneath it.
Is airline safety slipping through the cracks?
I don't know what you call this mess.
It came as quite a shock to the investigation.
The city of Cork, on the southern coast of Ireland. A place famous for its deep water harbour and its foggy weather. Today, that weather has put Manx 2 Flight 7100 into a holding pattern.
If the fog doesn't clear, we could head for our alternate. Land at Waterford.
The commuter flight from Belfast, Northern Ireland, was supposed to land in Cork at 9 a.m.
Maybe Kerry.
30 minutes later, it's still circling the airport.
Cork faces out to the Atlantic, so fog is very common. And fog will roll in and it will roll out, sometimes at no notice, sometimes it may last for 4 hours, other times it may last for 2 or 3 days.
In our part of the world, we have a saying, it was like pea soup, because it was very, very thick.
Hope we land soon. Got work to do.
There are 10 passengers waiting to land this morning, including Lawrence Wilson, travelling to Cork for the day on business.
I was going to Cork to do forklift truck training. I had been in that same location, doing the same course several times before, so it was sort of really old hat to go down. I've done it before.
Today's flight is aboard a Fairchild Metro 3.
It's a very small plane. I'm 6 foot. I couldn't have stood up inside it.
The 19-passenger turboprop is designed for short, low-cost flights.
The airline in question was serving Belfast to Cork, which is a route that wouldn't be economically justified in a jet like a 737 or an Airbus.
Flying the plane today is First Officer Andrew Cantle of England. While he concentrates on circling over Cork, Spanish Captain Jordi Solá López is checking the weather at nearby airports.
Surface wind is calm, visibility is 900 meters in fog.
All copy, thanks very much. And the weather, is it improving in Cork?
Oftentimes these aircraft are crewed by 2 pilots.
Sam Stotterow is a flight instructor on the Metro 3.
The pilot flying is responsible for aircraft flight path control, configuration changes, etc. The pilot monitoring is going to be focusing his attention outside and inside, looking for the airport environment, the runway environment.
Okay. Another small improvement at runway 17.
At 9:35, the controller tells the captain the fog has lifted slightly.
Visibility at touchdown zone is 500 meters.
Okay, in that case, any chance to perform one approach there?
You are clear to land runway 17.
Clear to land, runway 17.
After 20 minutes circling the airport, the crew must now shift focus to the complex task of getting their plane on the ground.
We're good. I've landed and worse.
There was only the one lady on the plane, and I was just talking as if I had experience. I had no experience at all. I just wanted to kind of reassure her that everything was going to be okay.
Glide slope is coming in.
The pilots confirm the plane is lining up with the runway.
Okay, Guys will be coming in.
And they're descending at the correct speed.
Speed's okay.
You're using your heading indicator, your horizontal situation indicator, and other indicators like the attitude indicator to put the aircraft flight path where it's supposed to be.
I took control of their power, okay?
The captain tells the first officer he'll adjust the engine power during the landing.
That's fine, yeah.
All daylights are on. Landing gear is down. Yes, the weather is much better here.
So I was on the left-hand side of the plane, looking out just behind the wing. And I remember I couldn't see anything, no runway, nothing at all.
Okay, minimum. Continue.
The plane descends through its minimum, or decision altitude.
It's called decision altitude because that's the altitude that if you do not have the runway environment in sight, the decision to go missed is made.
The captain pulls the thrust levers back to reduce power. Unexpectedly, the plane rolls hard to the left.
What the heck? Go around! Go around!
Hang on!
I remember looking out the window and seeing grass about 10 foot below me. Well, I knew that wasn't good. Thought I was gone. I did for a minute or two. I thought I was gone. I thought, this is it. I'm out of here. That's all about it.
A sudden alarm warns controller Sean Patrick he may be facing a disaster. The radio in the tower has picked up an emergency beacon from the plane.
Max 7100, contact the tower.
We didn't realize there was a problem until the emergency locator transmitter went off.
Max 7100.
With the airport shrouded in fog, he can't see a thing.
Might be nothing. A heavy landing could trigger that alarm.
There's a minute there where you're in limbo. You're waiting for the crash crews to ramp up, for them to actually deploy. So you're just there waiting.
Tower to fire crew. Can you see the plane yet?
You're hoping for the best, but preparing for the worst. The ground controller instructed the fire crews to deploy to the threshold of runway 17, and they then entered the runway and commenced a search pattern.
Crash, crash, crash.
And then they called crash, crash, crash on the ground frequency. And it was only at this stage that we became aware that the aircraft had actually crashed on landing.
Manx 2 Flight 7100 has slammed into the mud beside runway 17. Rescue workers quickly douse the flames and get to work freeing the survivors.
I remember daylight coming into the plane, but everything was so crushed and stuff. Then he come to me and had to prise the two chairs, the one in front and the one behind, to try and get me out. I had to reach in with a penknife and reach down in and cut the seat belt to actually get me relieved. And I got standing up in the part of the plane which wasn't that badly crushed. I only realised then that the plane was upside down. I was standing on the roof and I looked up and the chairs were up above me.
Of the 12 people on board, 6 have been killed, including both pilots.
It's a huge, significant event that no controller ever imagines will happen. But no matter how harrowing it is for them, it's nothing compared to what actually happened to the people on board, and our sympathy would lie with those and their families.
It's a time of great sadness for all who have died. Their families are grieving, and we need to maintain time and space for that.
This is Ireland's deadliest crash in nearly 45 years. Cork Airport is notorious for its fog. Many people are speculating the poor weather is to blame.
A lot of flights are cancelled in and out of Cork every year because of the conditions. There was quite some controversy about the decision to build the airport there in the first place.
That controversy is sure to be reignited as news crews descend on the small airport and begin broadcasting images of the aftermath.
Certainly the airport will not be operational for a good period of time while they conduct their investigation.
The Manx 2 crash at Cork was a major news story. Questions were asked about the safety of flying, so it mustn't have been a very easy thing for the Irish investigators to approach this.
Ireland's Air Accident Investigation Unit is immediately under pressure to find out what went wrong.
Pictures from the scene in Cork showed the aircraft wings were shorn off and the entire front half of the fuselage was crushed.
News that Manx 2 Flight 7100 crashed in dense fog provides an immediate suspect. Investigators ask controllers to tell them more about the weather the pilots were facing.
Sean Patrick, how can I help?
And how it affected the flight.
The controller will be a crucial part of any investigation. They can advise exactly what information they gave, what the weather conditions were like at the time, and what was actually said.
They immediately hear something troubling.
They'd already done two go-arounds. They attempted a third.
The pilots had already tried landing twice before they crashed.
A go-around or a missed approach procedure is anytime an aircraft arrives at the bottom of the runway threshold and is unable to continue the landing attempt. They will power up and reconfigure for a climb and climb away.
Clear to land, runway 17.
The pilots attempt their first landing just after 9 a.m. They try to line up with runway 17 and descend to about 100 feet from the ground. But all they can see is the fog.
Damn it, I can't see the runway. You?
Negative. I do not have the runway.
Pilots are not supposed to land unless they can clearly see the runway.
Go around.
Roger. Go around.
Ten minutes later, the crew decides to try a different tactic.
Any possibility of proceeding to runway 35?
Maybe on the other side, the sun won't be shining on us.
They ask if they can circle around to a runway on the other side of the airport. They hope they'll be able to see more clearly with the sun at their back.
Doesn't seem much better.
This time they descend to just 91 feet from the ground, lower than a 10-story building. But they still can't see the runway.
Go around.
You really come up very, very steep up out of the fog, and that was the only time that I would say all the passengers really got excited, because we all went, whoa, because of the steepness that he pulled it up out.
Controllers don't know what went wrong on the third landing attempt.
Visibility at touchdown zone is 500 meters.
Only that the pilots opted to try runway 17 again, instead of diverting to a different airport.
Okay, in that case, any chance to perform one approach there?
You're cleared to land runway 17.
After making a second go-around, there's significant stresses and internal pressures that exist because there's now two attempts that were unsuccessful. So oftentimes pilots will feel internal pressure to make it happen.
Going out! Go around!
Ram Levy.
On runway 17, engineering lead Graham Liddy surveys the crash site. Most of the plane has come to rest upside down at the side of the runway. For Liddy, the first question is obvious.
Doesn't make sense. How did they manage to flip over?
It was immediately obvious that the airplane travelled a long distance in an inverted position. That immediately starts to suggest that control was actually lost. It's not a normal thing for an airplane to land upside down.
Liddy and his team are desperate for any information that might explain why the landing went so horribly wrong. Their best hope, the plane's flight recorders. They capture what the pilots do and say in the cockpit.
We were very anxious to get this information as quickly as possible.
But patience is required. It's too soon to say exactly how long it might take to retrieve the crucial data from the recorders.
Invariably, the data from the flight data recorder and the cockpit voice recorder takes a little bit of time to download and to analyze.
Okay. No one touches anything until we record exactly where it is.
Meanwhile, he focuses on the wreckage strewn along the runway.
The big issue is never to speculate. It's to go and evaluate the evidence and then come up with an analysis of what actually happened.
The trail of aircraft debris stretches almost 600 feet, from the point the plane first touched down to where the main fuselage came to rest in the mud. Each small piece along that trail could be an important clue.
A lot of useful information about the history of those events or the sequence of those events can be derived from the marks that the aircraft makes when it makes initial contact with the ground.
What the hit? Cockpit sign there, please. Wiper blade, please.
Recording the location of every piece of wreckage can be a time-consuming task. Liddy decides he needs some high-tech help.
How quickly can you get me a laser scanner?
The laser scan is a facility where you can actually scan the entire area and produce a three-dimensional picture of the accident site. And it records all the positions of these pieces of wreckage.
Thank you.
Until he can finish his work, the runway at Cork remains closed.
There's obviously a lot of pressure to get the airport back into operation again. That's a pressure you just have to accept.
But it's not the only pressure Liddy faces. He's all too aware that travelers across Ireland are nervously waiting to hear what caused the island's deadliest air disaster in decades.
Read about this.
The 3D scanner has arrived, and Graham Liddy can get to work surveying the Manx 2 crash site. The spinning head uses laser light to capture the exact position of every piece of wreckage, as well as the contours of the runway. It creates a virtual crash site that investigators can revisit down the road.
You may not need it all, but at least you have it captured now and you're not faced with the embarrassing situation of, well, we've moved it all and we've destroyed this and we've restored the runway and all these marks are now gone.
With the scan complete, the wreckage is taken to a hangar for further study. Every system needs to be checked for signs of mechanical failure. They focus first on the control surfaces on the wings and tail that pilots use to control the plane.
This particular aircraft, all the control systems are cable operated, as is normal of an airplane of this size and vintage.
What the hell? You need to go right. I am.
If any of the cables break mid-flight, it can lead to a catastrophic loss of control. That's exactly what happened 3.5 years earlier and half a world away in Tahiti. A twin otter climbs out after takeoff from the island of Moorea. At 400 feet, a badly worn control cable suddenly snaps. There's nothing the pilot can do as his plane speeds towards the ocean. The impact kills all 20 people on board.
Do you have those cables matched?
In Cork, investigators soon discover that not all the Metro 3's cables are intact. Some are broken, raising the critical question, did they wear out and snap just as the plane was about to land? The team studies the cables carefully to see if they can figure out why they broke.
There's a distinctive difference between a cut cable and a cable that is actually fractured.
They find no evidence of metal fatigue and no sign the cables wore down gradually through the years.
So we were able to determine that in this particular case, the separation of the cable wasn't caused by a mechanical failure over a period of time.
Investigators conclude the cables were cut during rescue operations. They have nothing to do with the crash.
They had to cut into the belly of the aircraft in the cockpit floor area, which is unfortunately an area through which all the control cables run in this particular kind of airplane.
The finding rules out one potential cause.
Yes.
But leaves investigators with no new leads as they endure intense pressure to explain the crash.
It's a very, very demanding, very specialised role, and it's vital that it is done properly.
Investigators hope the results of the 3D laser scan will give them the breakthrough they so desperately need.
Bring up the crash site.
The scan lets investigators see the exact position of the plane as it careened down the runway.
We're actually able to determine all these marks with a precision of millimeters.
Almost immediately, the strategy begins to pay dividends.
We know the first bit of debris came from the right